She leads a government of zombies. Her Frankenstein Brexit deal, it's now dead. And those are some of the nicer things being said in London. A day after Parliament killed British Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal deal from the European Union, the opposition tried to snuff out her government completely. But you know, zombies, they never die. Tonight, Theresa May, she's still in power, and she still believes in Brexit. Still. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
Order. We now come to the motion of no confidence in Her Majesty's government.
Mr. Speaker, this government cannot govern and cannot command the support of Parliament on the most important issue facing our country.
Should the next step be a general election?
Every single previous Prime Minister in this situation would have resigned.
I believe that is the worst thing we could do.
This is indeed a zombie government.
Following the referendum that divided our nation in half.
This Frankenstein deal is now officially dead.
And last night's vote showed that we do have a long way to go.
Mr. Speaker, it is a pleasure to follow the Prime Minister. Of course, I wish her no ill will, and if she does choose to resign today, can I wish her all the best for her future career.
And to our viewers on PBS in the United States and to our viewers all around the world, welcome. We begin the day, which has been another hell day for British Prime Minister Theresa May. Last night, Parliament overwhelmingly rejected May's Brexit plan to take the UK out of the European Union. Never before in the history of British democracy has a Prime Minister been dealt such a severe blow by lawmakers on such an important issue. Well, exactly 24 hours later, the opposition Labour Party went in for the kill by calling for a no-confidence vote. In May's government, in any other time, in any other situation, we would most certainly be reporting the end of a government and the resignation of its Prime Minister. But the fear of giving the government to Labour, it's much greater than the disaffection for Theresa May's Brexit plan. Tonight, May is still Prime Minister, her government still in power, and she is still convinced that Brexit means Brexit, with some necessary adjustments.
The ayes to the right, 306. The noes to the left, 325. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock! Point of order, the Prime Minister.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that this House has expressed its confidence in the government tonight. I do not take this responsibility lightly, and my government will continue its work to increase our prosperity, guarantee our security, and to strengthen our union. And yes, we will also continue to work to deliver on the solemn promise we made to the people of this country to deliver on the result of the referendum and leave the European Union. I believe this duty is shared by every member of this House, and we have a responsibility to identify a way forward that can secure the backing of the House. To that end, I've proposed a series of meetings between senior parliamentarians and representatives of the government over the coming days, and I would like to invite the leaders of parliamentary parties to meet with me individually, and I would like to start these meetings tonight.
Yeah, what to make of all the high drama that we have witnessed at Westminster in just the past 24 hours? Where does this political saga, where does it take us next? Well, now that she has survived a no-confidence vote in Parliament, Prime Minister Theresa May will try to keep her Brexit plan alive. How's she going to do that? She must return to Parliament next Monday with a new proposal, a Brexit Plan B. That means at home she'll convene with rebels in her own party and opposition lawmakers to try and find a compromise. She has not invited the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, the zombie thrower, to take part in those talks, we understand. Now, she'll most likely meet again with European Union leaders. This is crucial now to try and persuade them to make changes to that withdrawal agreement. But the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, said today that it is up to London now to move forward with an orderly withdrawal. At the same time, the European Union is stepping up contingency planning for a no-deal Brexit. Now, if May fails at putting together a Brexit Plan B that Parliament will support, she could call fresh elections. She could ask the voters to back her deal, or she could opt for a second Brexit referendum, with voters giving a choice of May's Brexit deal, a choice of leaving the European Union with no deal, or they could simply choose to stay in the EU and to forget about Brexit. Now, May has repeatedly ruled out that option, but one senior opposition Labour figure has told DW News that it is now a realistic possibility.
I know many people in Germany have doubted whether this was viable or practical. Believe me, there are very many people right across Westminster tonight talking about a second referendum now in very hard practical terms, very many more than there were this morning.
And as you may know, Britain is set to leave the EU. That's the magic day right there, the 29th of March. If no deal is reached by this date, Britain will crash out of the European Union, a hard Brexit, as it's called. Many are calling for more time, but Theresa May, she remains adamant the EU will not give the UK more time if the British Parliament cannot agree on one single Brexit plan.
Of course, Article 50 cannot be extended by the UK. It has to be extended in consultation, in agreement with the European Union. The government's policy is that we're leaving the European Union on the 29th of March. But the EU would only extend Article 50 if actually it was clear there was a plan that was moving towards an agreed deal.
Well, the drama, it remains high, just like the stakes for both Britain and the European Union. And to put that all into context tonight, I'm joined by our own Brussels-based correspondent, Georg Mattes. He's got the view from Brussels. And from Washington, D.C., I'm happy to welcome one of the most respected authorities on all things Brexit, David Charter. Now, David has written several books considered must-reads on Brexit, including Europe In or Out and What Has the EU Ever Done for Us. David is now the U.S. editor for the Times newspaper in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, it's good to have you on the day. David, let me start with you. We understand that your newspaper, The Times, has reported that the European Union is now willing to delay Brexit until 2020. Is that something, can you confirm that tonight?
Yes, Brent, the situation is this. A delay has been considered for Article 50, the formal two-year mechanism for Brexit, which was due to end on March the 29th. It's been considered for a while now in the corridors of Brussels because they could see that the British government was nowhere near getting an agreement through Parliament. They now think that the original plan to extend that for 3 months until the European elections take place and the new European Parliament is ready to sit at the end of June, the start of July, that is not enough time. So the information we're getting both from Berlin and from Paris is that they are prepared to come up with some arrangement that lets Britain try and negotiate a better deal, another deal that could go, if needed, to the end of this year.
And David, do we know, are they just waiting now for the UK, for Theresa May to formally ask for that extension?
The British would have to request this. Clearly, the fear in Brussels is of a no-deal Brexit, which is seen as the worst-case scenario across Europe, for which there would be catastrophic economic consequences with the euro still in a delicate state. And they feel that making it known that this is possible, a much longer period to formulate a new deal, will help Theresa May survive and to formulate a new deal, perhaps one that includes some kind of customs arrangement with the EU that is sufficient to get through Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, these are quite significant developments tonight. Georg, let me ask you, there in Brussels, what have you heard about this probable delay in Brexit? I mean, are you able to confirm that from your sources in Brussels tonight?
I will say this to you, Brent. I think an extension of a couple of months leading to midsummer is already a big challenge, because it would create all sorts of troubles for the European elections that David has mentioned. Delaying Brexit further than that would mean that the UK's lawmakers would have to participate in the European elections, but practically they would be, as the UK itself in the Council, in the forum where the member states are represented, be basically a lame duck. So one wouldn't know, are they still a full member or half a member? So I'd be really interested in what kind of a solution you could put on the table. One thing is clear. If the EU would give such a great extension to the UK, they would have to put a plan on the table that really makes it worthwhile for the EU to allow something like this. So they really need to put something in front of the EU where they say, okay, if you do that, I can see. So I had diplomats telling me if a people's vote would be on the table, a couple of months would be possible. But I'm not sure what kind of a plan they could suggest in order to get such a great extension.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the situation very fluid tonight. Let's take a listen to what Theresa May, what she had to say earlier today, basically sounding like she doesn't want to change her position on Brexit. Take a listen.
There are actually two ways of avoiding no deal. The first is to agree a deal, and the second would be to revoke Article 50. Now, that would mean staying in the European Union, failing to respect the result of the referendum, and that is something that this government will not do.
So, David, okay, we've heard the Prime Minister say that, but based on what you're telling us, then she is evolving, if you will. She is willing to allow a Brexit deal to keep the UK in the customs union of the European Union. Is that how we are to understand that tonight?
Yeah, the distinction, Brent, is that it's well known that the Brexiteers in her party will never allow a Brexit that keeps Britain in the customs union, because it will prevent any chance of Britain forming its own trade deals with other countries around the world, because it will be tied to the EU trade policy. Mm-hmm. So what must happen is some sort of middle way, perhaps where Britain stays in a customs arrangement, a customs union, if you like, for goods, which is a very well and long-established part of the single market with the EU, but perhaps it retains the freedom to make its own trade deals in services. And we know that this is one of the big growth areas that the British government wants to explore with the US, for example, in trying to make deals to get contracts in government procurement. That could be a way forward.
But isn't that something, David, that the European Union, at least up until now, has categorically rejected, that it wasn't going to separate services, for example, from tangible goods?
Well, actually, it's Theresa May who's ruled out staying in any customs union with the EU. It's one of her red lines. Mm-hmm. So she would have to withdraw that from that red line and try and come up with something, and I believe this might be negotiable, something that keeps a close, if not identical, relationship on goods, but allows for variance over time on services. Personally, I think it might be the way forward.
Okay. Georg, you're hearing this. Do you think this is something that is going to, fall upon welcoming ears in Brussels?
Now, personally, I would say I can't see this at all. This is exactly what cherry picking looks like. You would separate financial services from trade, and that is what the EU and what all the experts, all the leaders, all the negotiators I've talked to have categorically ruled out. The UK will not get a customs union, but if they want a customs union, the customs union is on the table. And if you want to resolve the dilemma of the hard border in Northern Ireland, between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, it is the customs union that provides the solution to that.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we certainly appreciate the analysis. Georg Mattes in Brussels, David Charter in Washington. David, we appreciate the update, too, the latest developments on a story that is definitely changing as we speak. To both of you, gentlemen, thank you. Well, in Britain, it's Brexit and the Prime Minister's crushing defeat in Parliament. In the United States, it's the Trump presidency and that government shutdown, now the longest in American history. On both sides of the Atlantic, we are witnessing democracies under unprecedented strain. The world of politics and consensus has devolved into an us against them brinksmanship. Some would even go so far as to say that we are in the process of a democracy breakdown. And make no mistake about it, no one wants to import the political problems that are crippling the UK and the US. That is especially true for the European Union. EU lawmakers are being adamant about 2 points tonight: their willingness to work with Britain in reaching a Brexit deal, as we just heard, and in their resolve to keep out of Europe the contagion of polarized politics and the erosion of public civility. I want you to listen to what one well-known member of the European Parliament said about that today.
What we don't want is that this mess in British politics is now transferred and imported in European politics. So let's try to find a solution.
And the head of the European Council, Donald Tusk, he put the question out there last night. I mean, talk about putting it out there directly. If a deal is impossible and no one wants no deal, then who will finally have the courage to say what the only positive solution is? Yeah, the courage to speak power to truth. Is there a danger that the countries in the European Union, such as right here in Germany, that they could soon be faced with political paralysis on the order of a Brexit? Well, to talk about Europe, I'm happy to welcome back to the day Metin Hakverdi. He is a member of the German Parliament, the Bundestag for the Social Democrats. He is a member of the Committee for EU Affairs, correct me if I'm wrong here, and he's also a member of the Bundestag's USA North America group, a true transatlantic politician as well. It's good to have you back on the show. I want to just start with the news that we're getting here, that there is this sign coming from Europe that there's a willingness to delay Brexit. Have you heard that? I mean, have you heard from your sources here in Berlin that Germany is part of the contingent saying we're willing to give them more time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on the show again.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. The question is, what's our way to that extension? And it should be, as we've heard before, of many voices in Germany today, and also in Brussels. It has to be a clear signal coming from London first, so we are not importing the conflict, the polarization of Westminster into the European Union, but have a clear idea what could be backed by a majority in London, which is obviously at this point very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what will be acceptable to a majority in Parliament. But if Theresa May, if she goes to Brussels and if she asks for an extension till 2020, and if she asks for this bifurcation, if you will, this distinction between services and manufacturing goods in the customs union, is that something that you could foresee Germany and the European Union saying yes to?
Well, we've just heard in this discussion prior to our talk here, I don't want to repeat the cherry-picking argument and the discussions we had in the past 2 years. We are at a totally different stage at this point, and I understood the Prime Minister very clearly today after the vote that she wants to try to take this last chance till Monday to talk to other members of Parliament and the opposition to make up a plan, to come up with a plan that could be held by a majority of the British Parliament, and then afterwards, and then ask for extension of the 29th date.
And do you think it's realistic to extend it to 2020? I mean, to go past the European Parliament elections, which are scheduled for May?
It depends. It's difficult to imagine till 2020, but I wouldn't set a fixed date once there is, which we don't have at this point, once there is a majority in the British Parliament, which would be a totally new situation, right? We've seen this today.
Yeah, of course.
And yesterday. So if she managed, or other would manage in Parliament to get that majority, I think the European Union would be very generous, because we want to see a majority of any kind in the United Kingdom.
But you're not afraid of there being, this contagion I want us to talk about. You're not afraid that if Brexit has not started, and we have these European Parliament elections, aren't you afraid that that is going to have an adverse effect on the elections?
It has an effect, but it doesn't have to be necessarily adverse. Obviously, it has an effect, and timing is everything here, right?
Right.
So, but once there is a clear sign of a solution which the United Kingdom can think of, and its Parliament, not only its government, then I think it depends on how clear, how concrete this solution is, and then I think you can manage to have a timing on this one, whether it should be a longer one or a shorter one. 2 years sounds a little too long for me.
Yeah.
2 months sounds a lot better, but I think it shouldn't be a formal border of, okay, let's say the European election, the European Parliament election. If there was a good deal, a good proposal with a good majority in Westminster, I think we could manage that problem as well.
Okay. We were struck by two moments, one from last evening in London and another one from last month in Washington. We were struck by what was said to us about civility in politics and about mutual respect in politics. I want you to take a listen to what Theresa May said last night when she got the results, this crushing defeat for her Brexit deal in Parliament.
First, we need to confirm whether this government still enjoys the confidence of the House. I believe that it does, but given the scale and importance of tonight's vote, it's right that others have the chance to test that question if they wish to do so. I can therefore confirm that if the official opposition table a confidence motion this evening in the form required by the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, the government will make time to debate that motion tomorrow.
All right, now consider that and listen to an exchange between the U.S. President and the leaders of the U.S. Congress last month as an attempt was made to avert what has now become the longest government shutdown in American history.
You know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on
You've
my...
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And
We
I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border
But we
security.
believe you shouldn't shut it down.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
You know, we were still talking about that. Can you imagine an exchange like that taking place in the Chancellery or even in the Bundestag?
Well, President Trump is a populist. So he's a populist by definition, by my definition, by the definition which is so dangerous to liberal democracies, is he's constantly attacking institutions of democracies. So in this case, he's attacking, obviously, blackmailing U.S. Congress. And no, at this point, no. But we have to do our homework that it will not happen in the future.
Well, you know, Russia is seen by many as having a hand in the emergence of Brexit and in the presidential election of 2016 in the U.S. Can the rest of Europe, can Germany protect itself? How vulnerable do you think Germany is, the democracy in Germany, when it comes to meddling from foreign powers?
Open societies have advantages and disadvantages. Open liberal democracies are very strong because everybody could say what he or she wants to, and
as long as they're respectful to each other, right?
And they're respectful to the law, right? So, but the disadvantage is that everybody can participate, and that's what's happening. So obviously there is influences from the outside Germany into our last election, in public debate generally. We had a lot of Russian stories connected to that. But the question is not whether we can really protect ourselves, I would say. The challenge is that we are strong enough in our own discourse, in our public discourse culture, which makes us to a democracy.
So you don't see what's happening with Brexit or in the United States. You don't see that as a contagion that has to be kept out of Europe or Germany.
To get this example of the bus driving through London and telling people that, I don't know, 270 million pound would be saved for the healthcare system in Great Britain.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we shouldn't. I wouldn't suggest to make a law to prohibit people painting buses with numbers. I would support a move to say, well, there have to be strong, rational discourse in public, and then people that at the end, democracy will prevail, the better argument.
Just be reasonable. Yeah, it's something we don't hear very often. It's good to hear a politician say that for a change as well. Mr. Metin Hatverde, a member of the German Parliament, the Bundestag for the Social Democrats. Mr. Hatverde, it's always good to have you on the show and have your insights. The day is nearly done. The conversation continues online. You'll find us at dw.com or on Twitter, DW News. Follow me at Brent Goff TV. And remember, whatever happens between now and then, tomorrow is another day. We'll see you then.